Having kids was probably one of the biggest culture shocks that I ever had. I don't know if I could call it a culture shock, but it was a shock to my soul, my body, everything. I always wanted to be a mom. It was like ever since I was a child, I was just like, I'm going to be a mom. Okay? And as I was growing up, I dealt with a lot of depression, maybe a little bit of anxiety, which I was like working through with God. I was writing, I was doing my thing, I was having my quiet time with God. Okay. And I also had my first out of wedlock before I gave birth. Before I got married. Because I got married like almost as soon as we found out, because we loved each other, whatever. But all of that going on could do a lot to somebody in their walk, to somebody's perspective. And when I tell you, Jesus, like God, was my crutch, is my foundation in every sense of the word. Like, I fall short sometimes. I have fallen short sometimes. There's a lot of things that God is working on within me, but He is still very much my foundation. That literally, like, anytime there's a crack, there's a problem. There's a problem. And I feel like we don't always talk about this because, being that type of person who is like, I literally need God in my life, like every single day, or else there's a huge issue. And then having children, where it kind of like changes your momentum, it kind of changes your mindset, because like, remember in the Bible, when Adam and Eve ate of the fruit, God was telling Eve, in sorrow you will give birth. And I really wanted to be a mom, but I had a lot of sorrow with my first child, because I was dealing with getting pregnant out of wedlock, in a family that is very Christian, okay? Not super religious, but, we all believe that, you have to get married first. That's the first step before having children. But that does a lot to you. That does a lot. It doesn't matter if you're like, oh my goodness, like, falling short can sometimes just be somewhat life-changing in a way, where you end up in a whole other season where you have to work something out, because you're just like, oh my gosh, like, now I have like other strongholds that I have to work through. And now I have to realize these things about myself. And pre-kids, I had a quiet place that I would go with God. And I would pray, or I would just sit in silence, or I would just write. And after having kids, a lot of that changed, because motherhood is a huge sacrifice in a lot of different ways, and I can't use that as an excuse, because Jesus has checked me on that already. He was like, whoa, like, Holy Spirit really convicted me. It was like, actually, no, it's still your responsibility to make time. Like, it's still your responsibility. And so sometimes it can really feel like you're drowning, and it's really hard. But always remember that God is close to the brokenhearted. I went from literally driving to the park, spending hours at the park whenever I could. And that was my quiet time, to crying out in the shower, which I would do either way. But I like that time with God at the park was very valuable. Me just like leaving the house, getting out in nature, whatever, was like was very good for us. Okay, I know God really enjoyed his time with me. Okay, but it could look different in every season. And right now, I've had a lot of sorrow, because I'm pregnant with my third. And so I haven't really been posting much because I have to work this stuff out with God. Like, I will prioritize my spiritual mental health over, just putting up a mask and being like, oh my gosh, everything's okay. No, literally, I've been sobbing. I've sobbed because I'm like angry with God. And I can't remember what I was last angry with God. But I was sobbing, because I was angry with him. And I don't remember why, but I was just like, oh my goodness, it just kind of reminded me that, there are many different stages to motherhood, to your walk with Christ, and God stays close to the brokenhearted. It's not easy.